Everybody is interested in what Paolo Banchero does next. What's in store for him in a big 2025 season? It's time for Locked On Magic.
You are Locked On Magic, your daily Orlando Magic podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And you are indeed Locked On Magic. Today is September 24th. It will be September 25th, 2024. My name is Philip Rossman-Reich. I'm the senior writer over at OrlandoMagicDaily.com. Of course, follow me on Twitter at PhilipRR_OMD. On today's episode of Locked On Magic, what Paolo Banchero proved last season and how Paolo Banchero gets better in 2025. We'll put all those questions to rest today on Locked On Magic. Before we do any of that, we want to thank you again for making Locked On Magic part of your day every day, no matter when you listen to us, whether it's first thing in the morning, whether it's right when we upload. We truly appreciate you making Locked On Magic part of your day every day. Remember, there's a great Locked On podcast covering every single team in the NBA. Just search for Locked On and the team you're looking for, the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. Today's episode of Locked On Magic is sponsored by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. If you're listening to an Orlando Magic podcast, first off, thank you for doing so. We love that you do that, especially now that the season's getting ready to go. We'll be here 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, and weekends for games. So thank you for listening. But if you're listening to this podcast, you probably don't need me to tell you how great Paolo Banchero is. You probably don't need me to extol all his virtues and tell you that he is the kind of player you build a franchise around, the kind of player you hope to get with the number one pick. And that no matter anything that we argue here, the Magic will go as far as Paolo Banchero will take them, and the Magic are fully invested in how far Paolo Banchero will take them. There is a lot to say about Paolo, and we've talked a lot about him, obviously, because he's the star. We're going to talk a lot about him. We've talked a lot about him over the course of the last 4 months as we've waited for the Orlando Magic to get back onto the court and back into our lives and back into the season. There is a lot that Paolo's already good at. And I think I think what's frustrated Magic fans most this offseason is that typically when a player has the kind of season Paolo Banchero just had, and has especially the team success that Paolo Banchero just had, usually you spend a summer celebrating the guy, saying how great this player is, how good he's going to be, and what his future holds. Instead, it feels like we've had to be on defense. We've had to ward off all these claims that he is inefficient, which we'll get to. We've had to ward off all of these people saying the Magic are good in spite of Paolo rather than because of Paolo. Look, the fact of the matter is, the Orlando Magic as a franchise have not had a player of Paolo Banchero's capabilities and skills in a very, very long time. Paolo Banchero came onto the scene averaging 20 points per game, something very few rookies do. And while that might be some imaginary benchmark, it is meaningful because we're looking at the long term here. Everything with the Magic's about the long term. And Paolo got better last year than he was his rookie year. All those little weaknesses that people pointed out, he got better. He is on the right track. 22.6 points per game, 45.5% field goal percentage on high volume, 33.9% three-point shooting, up from 29.8. He was about 33 if you take out the February where he only made 1 3. His free throws went down. That's about the only place he went down. But a 46.5% effective field goal percentage his rookie year, up to 49.7. He averaged 6.9 rebounds per game, the same as his rookie year, up from 3.7 assists per game to 5.4 assists per game, leading the team, by the way. And since everybody loves talking about true shooting percentage, which is valuable, I'm not going to pretend it's not, his true shooting percentage went from 52.9% to 54.6%. His PER went from 14.9 to 17.3 for whatever you want to value PER as. His box plus minus went from -1.5 as a rookie to plus 1.3, according to Basketball Reference. His VORP, victories over replacement player, went from 0.3 to 2.3. And obviously, all these raw numbers got better in the playoffs. When the Magic needed their star player to show up and just produce raw stats, 27 points per game, including 3 30-point games, which included a 34-point game in game 5, I believe a 28-point game in game 6, and then a 38-point game in game 7. 45.6% shooting, yes, on 21.3 field goal attempts. He took a lot of shots. 40% three-point shooting. 51% effective field goal percentage, was worse than his, which was a lot better than his regular season. And even 75.5% from the foul line. What we saw from Paolo Banchero, and then 8.6 rebounds per game and 4 assists per game on top of that, plus 1.1 steals and 0.6 blocks, 1.7 stocks per game from Paolo Banchero. The thing that has annoyed me most about the way the national media has discussed Paolo Banchero this offseason is this feeling that they feel like he's a finished product. That this is it. This is as good as Paolo's going to get. And all these other players are about to pass him in the young player pecking order. Maybe that feeling is wrong, but that is so wrong. That whole idea is so wrong. Paolo Banchero is going to get better. I've said this a million times. His rookie year is the worst he's going to be. Last year is the worst he is ever going to be until he is on the doorstep of retiring. Paolo Banchero, because we know him, we see him work, he is only going to get better. This is not the end of the road. This is just the beginning. And frankly, the way he played in the playoffs, the way he upped his game in almost every facet, shows you there is another level to his game. That there is an ability to unlock something more. To average 27 points per game and have humongous games in the last 3 games of a 7-game series tells you that A, he is a player who is built for the playoffs. He's built to perform in the playoffs. And B, he is going to continue to get better. That first playoff experience, quite frankly, is the kind of thing that launches a player like Paolo Banchero, a superstar like Paolo Banchero. And the Magic may still be putting way too much on his plate. There are still a lot of things he needs to improve on, and we're going to talk about some of them today. But Paolo Banchero proved last season that he is going to be a perennial all-star. I'm not worried about him making the all-star team this year. The Magic are going to be a playoff team. They're good. Paolo's established. Coaches know. Honestly, coaches know how good he is. He's not unseating Tatum, Embiid, and Giannis as the starters. Not yet, at least. The coaches know how good he is and what a handful he is and the attention he brings. None of the stats I just cited talk about how much teams double him, how much teams put attention and focus on making him take those inefficient shots and take those contested shots. And yes, Paolo's decision-making needs to get better. I'm not going to sit here and pretend that, but that is the point. Paolo proved last season that he's figuring it all out, that he's getting better. And the more you play him, the more he plays, the better he is going to get. Paolo Banchero proved last season that the Magic were right to take him with the number 1 pick. That for what this team is and what this team wants to be, Paolo is the perfect star avatar, the starvatar. I don't know if that works. He is the perfect player to embody what the Magic want to be. Versatile, head down, getting to the basket, matchup nightmare, switchable, perimeter, and post. If anything, the task for the Magic now is to figure out how to get him those easy shots and get him to ease the burden that he faces. But the Magic right now want to load his plate with as much as he can handle because he's shown us he is capable of handling it. And frankly, again, if Magic fans are paranoid that nobody pays attention to this team and nobody treats the Magic star like any other star, it's because we should be celebrating what we saw from a 21-year-old Paolo Banchero. just as much as we should be excited about what's coming from a 22-year-old Paolo Banchero in the 2025 season. This is the task. And I said this throughout all of last season, and the task for Paolo is still the same. It's time to stretch those legs and figure out what stardom looks like for Paolo Banchero. It's time to figure out what Paolo's limits are and how the Magic begin to fill those limits. And quite frankly, what we saw last year shows us that Paolo still does not have limits. You could go back and listen to some of my pods earlier in the season. I predicted Paolo Banchero would get a triple-double before he scored 40 points. He got 40 points in December. He got his first triple-double in January. This is the kind of player we're talking about. The kind of player who can get 40 on one night and a triple-double on the next. That can carry an undermanned team that loses its second-best player on the road against a quality opponent in Sacramento and get them to double overtime and nearly win. And then goes into Denver the next night or the next outing and gets a triple-double, a 30-point triple-double at that, to upset one of the title contenders and one of the best teams in the league. Paolo is that dude. And now it's about how do we make that dude better. So let's address the criticisms head on. Let's give some numbers to the criticisms. We'll talk about the efficiency issue with Paolo Banchero coming up here in just a moment. But first, today's episode of Locked On Magic is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Hey, NFL fans, you could start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. FanDuel has so many great offers for you, from the NBA, where the Magic are over under 47.5 wins. They are currently the betting favorites to win the Southeast Division. They're 1-point underdogs at Miami in 1 month at the Kaseya Center when the Magic open their season against the Miami Heat. If NBA is not your game, you want something a little bit more immediate, go check out their odds on UCF against Colorado. Now up to UCF by 15.5 on FanDuel. That over-under 63.5, still looking super spicy. But UCF favored by 15.5 over Jamal Mosley's boys from Boulder, Colorado. In fact, if you're looking at the national championship odds, let's see if I can find them, plus 20,000 for UCF to win the national championship. UCF is actually one of the favorites now to win the Big 12 at plus 480. That trails only Utah as the top team in the Big 12. UCF's going to have a lot of action coming their way, including this week at the Bounce House against Colorado. Again, you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com, America's #1 sportsbook. We want to thank you for making Locked On Magic part of your day every day. For your next listen, enjoy the Locked On NBA podcast. There's no offseason in the NBA, and Locked On NBA provides daily basketball analysis from national and local experts in 30 minutes or less. No one keeps you as informed and entertained as Locked On NBA. Is available on YouTube or wherever you get podcasts. It's all part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So obviously there is this undercurrent of criticism about Paolo Banchero. And look, it's not unfair. Like, Paolo is a high usage player, wildly inefficient, still productive. It's not like he's inefficient and unproductive like Scoot Henderson was last year as a rookie. But obviously Paolo has been given a lot. And I made this point earlier in the summer that if you look at Paolo's kind of shot profile, or stat profile, and compared to like other elite kind of do-it-all forwards, it's not dissimilar. It's not dissimilar to what other players look like at his age or at his experience level. A lot of people have compared him to Carmelo Anthony. Carmelo Anthony wildly inefficient, kind of a mid-range merchant. Paolo, not too dissimilar from him. In Anthony, Anthony's first 2 seasons had the same inefficiency. Anthony averaged 21 points per game on 42.6, 32.2, 77.7 shooting splits his rookie year at 19 years old. And then followed that up with 20.8 on 43.1, 26.6, 79.6. Obviously, Anthony got to a higher level of efficiency. But Paolo is ahead of where Anthony was at that point. 50.9% and 52.6% true shooting percentages in Anthony's first 2 years. Paolo was at 52.9, 54.6 in his first 2 years. Again, on similar usage rates, 29.7% usage rate last year. Carmelo Anthony took that big leap in his third season. And so I think it's important to remember this comparison point. That yes, there are some elite players who are stars from the beginning who struggled with efficiency early in their careers. And so what we're waiting on for Paolo is this breakthrough. It's almost like an epiphany. It kind of happens, and then you just hope it, and then you have to maintain it, but it just happens, and then it happens. And again, I think the most important point to make about all this is, even with Paolo's inefficiency, the Magic are still plus 3.4 points per 100 possessions with Paolo on the floor. It's not like he is are the Magic killing teams with Paolo? No. But he's also playing mostly against other starters. Banchero is still kind of building his shot profile. And yes, I'm not saying that he's perfect the way he is. He has to keep getting better. I think it's ridiculous to assume that he won't. And again, he's shown that through his first 2 years. Look, Banchero's shot diet comes everywhere. He has the same shot diet that you would expect from a lot of stars. He shot 64.2% in the restricted area last year. 29.8% of his shots came there. He struggled a lot with his mid-range shot. He shot 40% on mid-range shots. 23.8% of his shots came from the mid-range. Again, mid-range is where the stars live. Banchero is actually 10th in the league with 4.2 mid-range field goal attempts per game, according to NBA.com. And among that top 10, his 40% is the worst. So again, you watch that video. I think NBA.com posted a workout video of his where he's working on that mid-range game. That's big. That is really important because he gets a lot of those shots and he can create all of those shots. And even if he shoots a little bit better, gets to 45, 46, 47%. We're not asking him to be Kevin Durant, who shoots 50, but if he wants to be an MVP candidate, that's probably what he's going to have to do. If he takes that big leap of efficiency, it's going to completely change the Magic's offense. It's going to open up some passing lanes. It's going to open up Paolo getting to pick what he feels like doing, and players being able to play off. Defenses will have to change and double him a lot more, and he'll have to rely on his passing and reducing his turnovers. Really, though, Paolo Banchero and really the Magic's bread and butter is his driving. He averaged 12.7 drives per game last year, scoring 7.7 points per game off drives, and shot 43.7% on those drives, according to Second Spectrum. Again, he got to the line for 7 free throw attempts per game, so he gets to the line a lot. Among players with at least 12 drives per game, Banchero ranked ahead of only Scoot Henderson's 41.2% in field goal percentage. Again, it is fair to criticize Paolo Banchero's efficiency and to say that the way that he gets to the next level is by being more efficient. That's a huge part of this discussion and of this game. But again, Paolo got better in all of these areas from last year. Paolo took a big leap in his field goal percentage last year. The Magic benefited from that. And obviously, Paolo got better in the playoffs. He shot 54.8% on mid-range shots in the playoffs. So if it felt like Paolo was really on his game in the playoffs, it's because he was. What we saw in the playoffs for 7 games is the efficient Paolo. I don't know why people, was he super efficient? No, he took a ton of shots. And I think really, again, if we're talking about Paolo getting to 28 points per game, he needs 6 more points per game or 5 to 6 more points per game to get there. if we're talking about him getting to that level, it starts with getting him some easier shots. It starts with him making more free throws. Efficiency is about free throw shooting too. He shot 70% on free throws last year on 7 attempts per game. So he's shooting 5 of 7. If you're shooting 6 of 7 or 7 of 7, those are 2 extra points right there. I know I made that point yesterday. I will keep making that point. If we're talking about the margins, these are the margins. The bottom line is the Magic have given Paolo the freedom to take these shots. Again, the mid-range is the provenance of the stars. Only stars get to shoot mid-range jumpers because that's kind of what defenses are giving them. And the way they get to the basket is they loosen them up with these mid-range jumpers, with operating within these spaces. Stars aren't always super efficient. They're not all Kevin Durant, who thrives, is just elite role player on top of being an elite star, an elite shooter. But Paolo's clearly kind of built the kind of shots that he likes. And now that he knows the shots he can get and is confident in the shots that he can get, now it's about making them more often. Now it's about making them at a higher clip and forcing defenses to react in a different way, to commanding the game. I know I made this point on our episode with Danny Cunningham of Locked On Cavs. The playoffs, it kind of felt like Paolo was playing on the seat of his pants. Which is fine. It's first time in the playoffs. He doesn't know what to expect. It really felt like Paolo was figuring things out as he went, whereas Donovan Mitchell kind of understood when to impose himself on the game. That's the kind of stuff that Paolo's trying to learn. Yes, shoot more efficiently, 100%. But also understand when to do these things. And so ultimately, how Paolo improves in 2025 comes down to something else entirely. We'll talk a little bit about that coming up here in just a moment. But first, today's episode of Locked On Magic is brought to you by our friends over at Gametime. It's a big day here in Central Florida, or here in Orlando on a Wednesday. I know the storm is on its way, so please be safe during the tropical storm. But the Tampa Bay Lightning making the trip east to Central Florida for their annual exhibition game against the Stanley Cup champion Florida Panthers. And if you have not bought your tickets yet and want to be in the Kia Center to see the Lightning take on the Panthers, Gametime is your best ticket to the game. Gametime has so many great features to make sure that you get the best price possible, including their Gametime Picks feature. That makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Gametime Picks filters out the fluff to show you the only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Gametime gives you not only the picks for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and more, their all-in pricing feature. If you toggle that, it shows you the total upfront with no surprise fees at checkout. They have the great panoramic digital views from your seat, so you can see where your seats are in the app before you buy. And with their lowest price guarantee, Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference if you find cheaper tickets elsewhere. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNBA. That's LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Gametime. This is obviously a big year for Paolo. It's as much. It's for the team. I think it's about continuing to establish your consistency. It's about repeating last year's success, and if you can advance yourself. But the baseline goal is repeat what you did last year. That's not the goal for Paolo Banchero. The goal for Paolo Banchero this year is to be better, to show us that he is a future All-NBA player, a future MVP candidate, because at the end of the day, that's what's going to determine if this is a successful project. At the end, this is already a successful project, but at the end of the day, that's where the Magic want to be. The Magic want to be a title team. They want to be competing for championships. They want to be getting out of the first round. They want to be in the conference finals. They want to be disappointed by a second round playoff loss. We got to get there first, but we want to be disappointed that we lost there. And you look at the teams it's a chicken or an egg problem, obviously. Are the best teams good because they have all NBA players, or all NBA players because they're on the best teams? It's a bit of both. And so while I think the Magic as a team, I don't want to say stagnating because I don't think that's good, but if the Magic as a team have virtually the same result as last year, but Paolo is still what he is now and does not dramatically improve or does not take steps forward, that's going to be a crisis. That's going to be a problem. I know we'll spend time defining what success is this season and defining how we measure growth on a young team that's expected to win. It's going to be one of the great themes of the season. We're going to revisit it over the next, I can't do math. We got 3 months left, 8 months. We got a lot of time to wrestle with this question. But one thing I know for sure is Paolo Banchero needs to take a major step forward. I mentioned it earlier. All of those great players that we can compare Paolo and his early career to, whether it's Carmelo Anthony, whether it's Kevin Durant. Like Durant's super efficient. His true shooting percentage took a big swing up his second season in a way that Paolo didn't. But let's just take Carmelo Anthony, a Hall of Fame player. A player who Paolo has been compared to a lot, by the way. Paolo's first 2 years were better than Carmelo's first 2 years. But Carmelo had the breakthrough in year 3. He found efficiency and elevated to a new level. The playoffs showed us that there is another level to Paolo's game. But there is another level beyond that, too. And a lot of it has to do with some decision-making. He averaged 3.1 turnovers per game last year. Got to bring the turnovers down. Got to be smarter with the ball, especially if it's going to be in his hands a lot. And there'll be mistakes. I think he has to be given some freedom to make mistakes, to figure out what a good shot is, to figure out when does he impose himself on the game. He struggled with a lot of that. You would see a lot of times where Paolo would over dribble into a shot instead of being efficient. I know he's talked about something he's been trying to learn how to do, and something he's been observing is how to be more efficient with his dribble. It was something I think he worked on with Jason Tatum a couple summers ago, or a thought that Tatum gave him, is how do you be purposeful with your dribbles? How do you be I know I did a video on discussing that last year. How do you be purposeful with every move you make and manipulate the defense to get where you want to go, to get to your spots as efficiently as possible, and then make the shot when you get there? You know, Franz and Mo Wagner, George Niang joked about this on the podcast when they were talking about Franz Wagner's playoffs. Mo was like, look, Franz is thinking about things that I don't have to think about. My job when I'm on the court is to set a screen, rebound, get deep post position, take a charge. That's Mo Wagner's job. Franz has got to figure out how he's going to get 30. Paolo's got to figure out how he's going to get 30 and the fastest way to get there. And even if the game calls for him to get there, maybe the game calls for him to be the triple-double threat. Can he understand and recognize when that moment is and then attack it with efficiency? This is all fudgy stuff. I can't put a number on any of this. I can't tell you that's how you'll know. I can't do that. But that's where Paolo has to be. That's the burden of the star. It's to be efficient, to understand what the game needs, and to give the team what it needs in that moment. Look, that sounds like a down note to end on, so I want to end on this. Paolo Banchero has a really good idea about a lot of these concepts already. The amazing thing about Paolo Banchero is that at such a young age, with so much responsibility put on him in his first 2 seasons, he has delivered in a major way. He has delivered in ways that, frankly, these numbers can't grasp. If you watch a Magic game and see the gravity that Paolo Banchero has, the way defenses have to shade him, or maybe the way defenses can shade him because the Magic don't have enough shooting. It's incredible watching him work. It's incredible watching him do the things that he does. Paolo Banchero is absolutely the right star for this Magic team to build itself around. It is, frankly, an incredible thing to watch. An incredible thing to see every night. This is a really good player. But all those critics are right. They may be wrong to the degree, they may be wrong to the way that they doubt him, but those critics are right. Paolo Banchero has to get better. And that's an easy thing to say. He's 21 years old. He is going to get better. But how far and how quickly the Magic develop and grow depends on how much better he gets. And the Magic certainly hope that after a team breakthrough last year, and really a breakthrough for Paolo last year as well, that Paolo not only matches what he did last year, but gets to that next level, gets to that level he showed us in the playoffs during an 82-game season. And see where that lifts the Magic and where that tells the Magic what more they need to help him continue and grow again. It's going to be a really fun season for the Orlando Magic, and it's going to be a really fun season for Paolo Banchero, because while there are a lot of critics and a lot of loud critics, Paolo Banchero can absolutely be one of the best players in the NBA. And I said this before, and I will say this again. A lot of those critics are comparing Paolo to the wrong players, because the kind of player Paolo Banchero can be is one of the absolute elite players in this league. The kind of player that does win you a championship in the end. I want to thank you all again for listening to today's episode of Locked On Magic. Of course, find me on Twitter at PhilipR_OMD. Subscribe to the podcast and Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, Himalaya, Google Play, Spotify, Odyssey, and all the Formation podcasts to your podcast-enabled listening device. For the latest on the Orlando Magic, be sure to check out OrlandoMagicDaily.com. You can find us there on Twitter at OMagicDaily. And for even more Orlando Magic content, be sure to check out my Patreon page, the Orlando Magic Hub. You can find that at patreon.com/Orlando Magic Hub. As always, thank you for your support. We'll be picking up a lot more on that as we get closer and closer to the start of the season. Now that you're done listening to me, though, be sure to check out the Locked On NBA podcast, where the local experts keep you updated daily on all the biggest storylines ahead of the season. Find Locked On NBA on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. That's going to do it for me today, though. I want to thank you all again for listening to today's episode of Locked On Magic. On our next episode of Locked On Magic, we're going to dive into the defense. The numbers that show how good this Magic defense can be. We'll get to that on tomorrow's episode of Locked On Magic. But until then, for Orlando Magic Daily and Locked On Magic, this has been Philip Rossman-Reich. We'll see you all again next time for another episode of Locked On Magic.